The jewel-encrusted Easter eggs made by Peter Carl Faberge for the last two tsars of Russia represent only a fraction of the imperial glory of Russia during its final decades, and only a fraction of the beautiful artwork that was made by the Faberge family for the tsars and other wealthy clients during that time. The first Faberge to come to Russia was Gustave Faberge in 1842. He was a jeweler who came to Russia seeking to attract the patronage of the nobility and hopefully the imperial family. He opened up a shop in St. Petersburg called the House of Faberge, adding the E to the final, or adding the accent to the final E on his name to give the name a little bit more elegance. Gustave Faberge trained his son, the famous Peter Carl Faberge, and in turn Peter trained his three sons in the family artwork. The Faberges were primarily jewelers, and they made their fair share of tiaras and necklaces and snuff boxes and other jewelry items, but they were also miniaturists and clockmakers as well. Some of their the larger pieces featured clocks, and they also featured automated pieces. Their miniatures and their artwork ranged from just single tiny statuettes of officers on horseback picked out in gems and precious enamel, to whole Russian villages, or even a railroad that could be wound up with a golden key and made to move along a track almost by itself. The work of the Faberge family caught the eye of the Tsar of Russia, and in 1885 Alexander was to give Peter Carl Faberge his most famous assignment, or running series of assignments. In Russia, the Easter tradition is more prominent than the Christmas tradition. Easter eggs are commonly exchanged by all classes of society. For most people, the Easter egg is the hard-boiled variety with a painted outer shell. However, the nobility would give each other gem-encrusted Easter eggs made from precious metals, and often used as pendants by wealthy ladies. Peter Carl Faberge in his workshop made many of these for the wealthy and other members of Moscow society and St. Petersburg society as well, but the Tsar was about to put a unique twist on this old Russian tradition. His wife, the Tsaritsa Marie, was from Denmark, and in her country people would exchange candied eggs and candy and other gifts on Easter. So she was familiar with that, and often was homesick and wished for a celebration that was more like what she was accustomed to. Tsar Alexander asked Faberge to create an egg that would be both a artwork on its own and also would contain his gift for his wife for that Easter in 1885. Faberge came up with a white pearly enamel egg that was hollow inside, lined with yellow gold. The surprise inside was a golden chick with ruby eyes. One could open the chick, and inside of the chick was a crown of yellow gold picked out with gems, and inside of that was a small ruby pendant that the Tsaritsa could wear as a neck chain around her neck if she desired. So Alexander and Peter Carl Faberge had combined the Easter traditions of Russia and Denmark along with the Russian stacking doll idea to create a very beautiful and exquisite gift for the Tsaritsa. She was delighted, and every year Peter Carl Faberge received a commission for a new and more spectacular Easter egg. When Alexander III died and his son Nicholas II came on the throne in 1895, Peter Carl had to design two exquisite large Easter eggs and had to become more and more creative each year. The pressure increased when other members of the aristocracy and other wealthy families throughout Europe learned of the tradition and began ordering the large Faberge eggs. In all, Peter Carl Faberge made about 65 large eggs, 50 imperial and 15 for other families. Of those, 57 have survived to the present day. 42 imperial eggs, and most, if not all, of the eggs made for other wealthy patrons. Some of the eggs were very spectacular. In 1900, the Tsar and Tsaritsa, Nicholas and Alexandra, wanted to celebrate the completion of the Great Trans-Siberian Railway across Russia, and Peter Carl came up with a green enameled Easter egg that was traced in silver with a map of the route of the railway with important stations picked out in precious gems and forming the rim around the edge of the egg. The surprise inside was a miniature train of 5 cars made of gold and platinum with little rock crystal windows, diamond headlights, ruby tail lights. This exquisite little contraption could be made to run by turning a golden key, and it would run along the inside of the egg on a little miniature track. In 1902 and 1904, Peter Carl designed 2 very similar eggs for 2 very different wealthy families, the Rothschilds, and then for the Kelch family, which was a wealthy merchant family out of Moscow. The 1902 Rothschild egg was a clock egg, and when the clock prepared to strike the hour, the surprise was a gem-encrusted golden cockerel, or rooster, that would pop out of the top of the egg, flap its wings, cock its head, and crow before the bell struck the hour. The Kelch egg, which was very similar, often called the Chanticleer egg, was made in 1904. Peter Carl outdid himself in 1913 when he made an egg that commemorated the Romanov tercentenary celebration. This celebration commemorated 300 years of Romanov imperial rule in Russia. This was an egg of gem-encrusted yellow gold with 18 portraits of Romanov reigning czars and empresses painted on ivory and decorated along the outside of the egg. The interior surprise was a double globe featuring the Russian Empire as it stood in 1613 when Tsar Michael was the first Romanov Tsar to take the throne, and 1913, which commemorated the 300-year anniversary with Tsar Nicholas II as the Tsar at that time. All of this beauty and glory had to come to an end at some point, and in 1917 the Russian Revolution occurred, the monarchy fell, Nicholas and Alexandra and their children were taken prisoner, their wealth and property confiscated, other members of the imperial family and the nobility of Moscow scattered, and the Bolsheviks were able to lay their hands on a treasure trove of property, including many of the famous Faberge eggs. In 1918, Peter Carl Faberge's workshop and showrooms in St. Petersburg were seized by the Bolshevik government, and he escaped to Switzerland, where he died in 1920. All 3 of his sons later eventually escaped Russia and reformed the Faberge business in Paris, and were famous particularly throughout the 30s and 40s for the elegance of their jewelry. Many times they often would repair or try to replace or replicate the pieces that their father had created during the imperial days. Meanwhile, what remained of the Faberge collection, including most of the imperial Easter eggs, Tsaritsa Marie only was able to get out of Russia with 1 of her precious eggs, but the others remained in the Kremlin Armory collection, and eventually Vladimir Lenin and later Joseph Stalin sold off most of these eggs as for liquid and ready cash to fund their revolution. Eventually, only 9 eggs remained in the Kremlin Armory collection. The other eggs were scattered throughout Europe and were eventually collected and assembled by other wealthy businessmen and nobility throughout Europe and the United States. The first businessman to show an interest in Faberge's work was an individual by the name of Armand Hammer. Yes, he has some connection to the baking soda logo, but that's a story for a different clip. Armand was an American, but he had socialist sympathies, and he was obsessed at finding and assembling the lost Romanov treasure. He became a personal friend of Vladimir Lenin and bought many of the Faberge pieces, including some of the eggs. However, Armand Hammer's claim to fame and connection with the House of Faberge also took a different turn. Armand had a friend by the name of Samuel Rubin who was thinking of starting a cosmetics and perfume company and wanted an elegant name to attach to his products. Armand Hammer suggested that he use the name Faberge. Samuel Rubin went for the idea and purchased the rights to the name from the family in Paris. And it is as Faberge, often attached to shampoo and hair care products, that most people in America know the name Faberge today. After Armand Hammer's death, his collection was scattered to other collections and private collections and museums around the world, and another important collector stepped forward to try to reassemble many of these treasures. Malcolm Forbes eventually owned 9 of the Faberge imperial Easter eggs and several other of Faberge's artworks. When he died, his estate was to be sold. However, the Faberge pieces were bought by a Russian businessman by the name of Victor Vekselberg. Mr. Vekselberg has made it his lifelong ambition to find and collect as many Russian art objects and historical objects as he can, purchase them, restore them, and bring them home to Russia. The Vekselberg collection encompasses 11 of the imperial Easter eggs and 4 of the other eggs that Faberge made for other wealthy clients. So at this point there are 11 imperial eggs and 9 of other imperial eggs that are inside Russia, along with a few of the other eggs that Faberge made for different customers. So the pieces that have survived of Faberge, both the eggs and the other artwork and jewelry that he made, are just a glimmer of a very lost and once very beautiful world.